Hey you guys, Snowy88 here, and I was curious, what do you thought about my comparison chart, which I made myself. It was more work than you might think, because to make everything right, I had to do a lot of pixel counting, and I had to look up a lot of sources to get the exact dimensions of some ships, and not every ship was easy to determine. For example, well, the Borg Cube was very easy because we know it's a cube and it's 3 by 3 by 3 kilometers, so that was pretty obvious. For example, the USS Enterprise D is also very well known, and same goes for Voyager. About the Nakebarg Klingon main, well, battleship, well, I had to look up that too, and I was surprised that the Nakebar was a tiny bit longer than the Galaxy class starship and a tiny bit 3 meters wider. So, but overall they do not, well, differ that much. And if I would say, by just looking at the picture between the USS Enterprise D and the Nakebar, I would say that the Enterprise D is more massive than the Nakebar, because the Nakebar seems to have more, excuse me, more open space. But if we consider the strength between those two ships, then I will definitely say that the Galaxy class ship outguns the Nakebar by far. And the reason why I state this is because of the last episode of The Next Generation. Although it is played in a future timeline, we see a Enterprise D beefed up, commanded by Commander Riker, captain by then, and he just destroys one Nakebar and cripples another one. So, well, although the Nakebar is a very tough ship, it still does not outpowers the Galaxy class starship. Another subject, by the way, is that in many occasions I see a comparison being made between the USS Vengeance and the Scimitar, and I see most people take side of the Scimitar, and well, I don't know exactly what to think of this, because these two ships are so differently, and even coming from different universes, because the Vengeance is from the Kelvin timeline and the Scimitar is from the normal timeline. So it's hard to say. Well, I think personally that the Vengeance would be a bit stronger, because I just determined this by looking at Star Trek Nemesis. We see the Scimitar firing a lot of torpedoes at the Enterprise E, and the Enterprise E loses his shields eventually, but it takes a lot of torpedoes, and they roll to starboard and then turn the bow to the Scimitar, and then turn around another time, and well, eventually they shoot at the Scimitar, but they don't do any much damage to it. And well, it takes the Scimitar basically a lot of torpedoes to get the Enterprise E knocked out of commission. On the other hand, if we look at Star Trek Into Darkness, we see the USS Vengeance catching up with the USS Enterprise Constitution class, also from the Kelvin timeline, and it shoots these, well, I don't know what they exactly are, like plasma bolts, red sort of pulse gun lasers, I don't know, but the shields of the Constitution from the Kelvin timeline it is crippled within a few shots. So, well, people who say that the Scimitar would easily win from the Vengeance, I don't know. It is a tough one. I cannot determine exactly who would win, because the Scimitar can endure also a lot, but the Vengeance has a lot of firepower in those plasma bolts, and sadly enough we don't see exactly what kind of torpedoes it has in use. You know, the torpedoes Scotty disables before they fire at the Enterprise, and we see the launchers fall down, which is basically very strange, because why would it fall down in space? But anyway, what kind of torpedoes would the Vengeance have? I don't know. It's like, well, still, it's the Kelvin timeline. I don't know. It's like I cannot compare these torpedoes, which we don't see on screen, with a standard photon torpedo or the torpedoes from the Scimitar. So it's very hard to say if the Vengeance and the Scimitar would meet, which ship would win. I don't know. I would clearly not know. If, for example, the Scimitar would come across Deep Space Nine, well, that's very interesting, because those are both from the same timeline, but we do know that the Scimitar had, I'm doing this all by memory, the Scimitar had probably, what was it, 26 or 27 torpedo launchers, and also a lot of phaser emitters, something like that. But Deep Space Nine, when refitted before the Dominion War, was also loaded for bear. And these two structures, Deep Space Nine is a structure and the Scimitar is a ship. And, well, by looking at the sizes of both objects, okay, Deep Space Nine is bigger but more open, although the Scimitar can be reviewed as a quite open ship as well. I don't know. It's well, difficult. It's very difficult. Since we do see the Enterprise E do not much of damage to the Scimitar, but it only fires a few torpedoes at it, while Deep Space Nine can fire a lot more torpedoes. So I don't know. I really don't know. You may decide. Scimitar versus Deep Space Nine. Well, I think Deep Space Nine would win, only because of its sheer firepower alone, and it's not by the power of a single torpedo, but by the amount of weapons which can be fired from the station itself at one time. So what remains? Well, the Borg Cube, of course, it's obvious. Nothing would win against the Cube. Even the Vengeance would probably have trouble with the Borg Cube, although I think the Vengeance could do a lot of damage. But the Borg Cube, well, yeah, the Borg Cube, I don't know. It depends on when you encounter it. In the Next Generation, when they first encounter a Borg Cube, the cube seems like, well, at first completely unaffected by Starfleet weapons, and then suddenly, and I just don't understand this, by the way, they are faced off against the Enterprise D, and suddenly they decide to sleep. It's like you are in the middle of battle. Okay, let's take a nap. I never understand why the Borg would decide to do that at just that moment. It was not set on canon why this happened. I even don't understand why, when the Enterprise D beamed aboard the Borg Cube, why didn't they take along 10 photon torpedoes just in case? So they could arm them, and when the Borg would be, wake up, then get the what out of there, and then detonate these torpedoes from inside. About detonating torpedoes inside, we see in Star Trek Into Darkness that the USS Vengeance takes a full brunt of 72 torpedoes exploding all at once inside the ship, and still it was intact when it fell down through Earth. Now, when the Tayloran thing on the Scimitar exploded, it exploded the entire ship completely. So, to get back to the Vengeance versus Scimitar, I think, well, this would probably do the Vengeance a more favorable position, because taking the brunt of 72 photon torpedoes, or in any case torpedoes, inside the ship, well, then it's a very tough ship. So what other combinations do we have in this picture anyway? Well, a Borg Cube versus Deep Space Nine. Nah, Deep Space Nine would not survive. The Deep Space Nine can do a lot of damage to the Borg Cube if it fires enough weapons to it, and as we've seen in Star Trek First Contact, if they just fire at one spot, even if that spot is not even vulnerable at that location, sooner or later they will penetrate Borg shields. And how fast the Borg might be regenerate, it does not matter. If you fire enough torpedoes at them, even a Borg Cube can be destroyed. So Deep Space Nine versus Borg Cube depends on how many torpedoes the Deep Space Nine can fire at once. And yeah, well, I still think that Deep Space Nine will not win, because if the Borg ship probably thinks it will lose, it could even ram Deep Space Nine, and then Deep Space Nine, if you just look at this picture, imagine the Borg Cube is a solid cube, and if it would just collide, like it did with the Species 8472 vessel, from which it could not win either, so it collided with it. But if the Borg Cube would just ram into Deep Space Nine, then Deep Space Nine would be completely obliterated. So, yeah, it's hard to tell, because, as said, it was never showed in canon. Deep Space Nine versus a Borg Cube. Would be nice though if they had done it in the show Deep Space Nine, to introduce some kind of Borg element, but no Borg was seen in Deep Space Nine, not to my knowledge anyway. So yeah, it's hard to say. So well, what's left? We see, for example, the USS Voyager. Well, the scale seems to be alright, because the Voyager has been in combat with a Borg Cube before, although it was not a normal Borg Cube but a tactical cube, and well, the tactical cube did seem to have the same dimensions as a normal cube. I'm not sure about that, but I think the scale on this picture I made myself is pretty right. And for all those people who say, no, the Vengeance is not 2,000 meters long, please watch the other video in which I made the calculation myself, purely based on the size of the island of Alcatraz. And that is known information. That information came directly from Wikipedia. The island was 511 meters in diameter on its widest point, and when the Vengeance crashed towards Earth, you can see the entire island also at its widest point. So then, with the Vengeance slightly behind it, I could just make the pixels count and then extrapolate the size of the Vengeance. If you think this is not right at some point, well, do let me know. Do let me know what is wrong about this calculation. And some people say the Vengeance is a lot smaller, but it's also because the size of the Constitution class from the Kelvin timeline is not well known. As I have shown in that video, there were probably 9 or 10 different types of sizes. The one article says this, the other one says that, so I could not do anything with it. The only thing I knew is that the Vengeance was twice the size of the Constitution class. So that would mean, in essence, that the Constitution class in the Kelvin timeline would be about 1,000 meters long. So it would be even bigger than the USS Enterprise D. Seems like a bit strange, but you know, it's the Kelvin timeline, and it's another timeline with other ships and other kind of sizes, and yeah, well, hard to say. So yeah, well, that's about it. It was a lot of fun of making this picture. When I was making it in paint, because I have very good paint skills, and when I put the Borg Cube in there, I thought by myself, oh no, it's taking half of the space already. Shit. Crap. And yeah, okay, well, but I managed to put in all these ships, and I think these, well, I think this picture does, well, put out the scale quite correctly. If you just look at the sizes, comparing the Galaxy with the Voyager, for example, and the Nakebar and the Galaxy are comparable. If I think about the Voyager who left Deep Space Nine, it's well, convincing. I know for a fact that the Sovereign class, which is not visible in this picture, which is slightly bigger than the Galaxy class, is on par with the Scimitar. But the Scimitar is a ship which can change shape because of its Tayloron emitter. So it's hard to say how big the Scimitar really is, because when all the sprites and the antennas are deployed, it's like a big spider thing. So especially with this type of ship, it's very hard to determine its size. Same goes for the Narada from the first Star Trek film in the Kelvin timeline. I mean, the Narada, it was like a huge spider ship. It was, I don't consider such a thing as a ship anymore. Those are very ugly things. I rather see a ship like the Nakebar, or just the Enterprise D, Voyager, Vengeance, and even such simple thing like a cube or a tactical cube. Or ships like the Tamarian vessel, for example, which was clearly a match for the Galaxy class starship. And of course Bird of Prey as well, and the Romulan warbirds are nice, and let me think which ships were basically ugly. Well, I can't really remember actually. Ugly ships. Well, like I said, only the Narada I found displeasing to watch, and well, the Scimitar, if fully deployed, it, like I said, it looked like a big spider. And yeah, yeah, about the Scimitar anyway. How could Shenzon, who was well, he was a clone, and he told that he had found his Riemann brothers. So who built this ship? Where did he build this ship? But with the Vengeance, the same thing, although I could argue that Admiral Marcus was the head of Starfleet, could order to build this ship out of sight, and maybe he even was part of Section 31. We are not sure, because some people say that Admiral Marcus had connections with Section 31, or was even the starting point of Section 31, because if you take the Admiral Marcus personality, you can definitely see that he was very protective about the Federation, although on the other hand he was not very protective about Federation citizens, because if Scotty did not disable those cannons, those photon torpedo launches, or what kind of torpedoes were in there, he would have destroyed the Enterprise with all its people on board. So what kind of protector is that? You know, it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like that's a dictator. That's someone who, well, who wants to protect his country but does kill his own people as well. So yeah, that was the Admiral Marcus story. So I have been talking 20 minutes straight, just on the fly, without thinking furthermore. I hope you enjoyed this picture, and if you have any comments about this picture, or maybe you want to see other comparison pictures, let me know. Maybe I can do something with it, and maybe something is not right about this picture. Or do you have something to say about, well, my ideas about which ship against which ship would win, and about the armaments, and well, my opinion about that? Then, well, please say so. It's I'm not always right, I know that. I've made mistakes before, like the calculation of the size of the USS Orville, from the Orville. My very first video was a big mistake, so that one I corrected, and maybe even that ship is even a little bit bigger also, so who knows. Yeah, but I think I'm, well, clearly on the spot with this one, and well, please comment, and I see you guys. Bye bye.